What's up, duelists? It's been a million years since I've done one of these, but it is time for another Edison format tier list video. I had hoped that a lot of stuff would change by the time I made this new one since the last one, and honestly, a lot of stuff has changed, mostly with regards to how we play a lot of these decks. The lists that we are seeing now are even more optimized, even more built differently. 100 emoji, fire emoji. So I'm pretty excited to share with you guys this my thoughts basically on what's going on in Edison format right now. Now, a lot of different players, a lot of different people have different opinions on what does well or what is the best deck or whatever, and that's kind of a large part of this. Tier lists are 100% subjective, so my own personal bias are going to play a role in this one, as are I'm sure the biases of every other person who makes a tier list. I'm sure a lot of you guys have watched tier lists on like other channels or whatever. But just try to remember that, and when you're raging in the comments because I ranked Gladiator Beast lower than you think they should be ranked, just remember that, you know, if you think that Gladiator Beast is a good deck, maybe you should try winning something with them, because it is it's not as easy as it looks. Anyway, let's just get right into things. We got the deck lists. You know, this is how I reinvented tier lists. I personally decided to start showing the deck list alongside it. You can see this deck list here. Oh wow, what a deck list. Anyway, we're going to show the deck list. We're going to rank the decks. We're going to get right into things. But first things first, make sure you're subscribed. And let's talk a little bit about the Edison format game plan Pentagon. I built this beautiful graphic for you guys. These are kind of the 5 game plans, or 5 primary game plans of decks in Edison format. There really isn't another game plan that your deck can take or assume. The primary game plans here are normal summon attack, mill prage, which is just like hope your mills are good, draw spells, which are decks that like spam draw spells, synchro combo, which is like, I don't know how to say it, like zombies or whatever, lockout, which is like you're hoping to lock your opponent out of the game and just win because they can't play the game, and you could eventually deck them out, or you could eventually like just slowly chip them to death, but locking the opponent out of the game becomes the primary game plan. This sort of pentagon is going to come up a lot when talking about these decks, and I'm going to sort of like try to classify the decks with each one of these 5, or sometimes multiples of these 5, but just keep this in the back of your head. These are like just primary game plans that I feel like a lot of decks in Edison format have. All right, moving on. First deck, Dragon Turbo. So this is the most recent, I believe, first place list from RBET 4 season 3, I believe. Raikoko 1. I don't know, man. There's a lot of first place lists in this, so just this deck is insane. This deck is really good. I would rank this deck in tier 1, like pretty solidly. It's won enough RBETs for me to just say that this is a good deck. Another thing that I will try to like make a note of is that some of these decks have like a skill differential where like they get better when you're better at the game. And one thing I've noticed about Dragon Turbo is that the better the player, the better the result. So definitely a huge skill differential for this deck. Don't expect to pick it up and just know what you're doing. The way the deck works, just for those of you who are new to it, is you try to draw your whole deck. It plays like Doomsday from Magic the Gathering. I don't know if you're familiar with that or if that's even relevant to you, but basically you try to draw your whole deck, pass the turn, then on your next turn OTK the opponent. So it's like it's an OTK deck, but it takes like a couple turns usually to get set up. Once you get set up, you can usually win through anything, but it just takes a few turns to get set up. So that's like, it's kind of a, when going back to the game plan pyramid, it's kind of a draw spell spam deck. You just try to draw your big combo OTK, and then you draw it in the end phase, because Super Rejuvenation draws in the end phase, and then you try to OTK. You can find gameplay of this deck if this is something you're interested in the RBET VODs. Check out the RBET playlist, etc. But yeah, I think it's pretty solidly a tier 1 deck. We've seen Ghost Rider win, we've seen Celiabot win, and we've seen Raikoko win, all really strong players with this deck in RBETs before, and we've seen it have a bunch of top success in the hands of like Pro Storm, Hydro Pump, etc. So I'm pretty solidly putting this deck in tier 1. I think one thing about this deck and one thing about this tier list is going to be a little bit of spoiler alerts, is how well a deck matches up against Blackwings. This is probably going to be the only deck with a bad Blackwing matchup in the tier 1. Just throwing that out there. I think every other deck that has a bad Blackwing matchup is going to be placed in tier 2. But this deck is just so good and so crazy that even with like kind of a questionably bad Blackwing matchup, sometimes you can just free roll them and there's really nothing they can do But yeah, I do think this is a tier 1 deck. And I think that if you are playing Edison format moving forward into 2025 or whatever, later 2024, and you're disrespecting this deck, it's probably a mistake, and this deck is going to free roll you if you run into it. So yeah, strong deck. Definitely make sure and prepare for it in the side. Similar sort of a bullshit dragon combo garbage is like Norlaris Dragons. Now, I do think this deck is a fair bit weaker than Dragon Turbo, mostly because Phantom of Chaos is interrupted by a very commonly played card, DD Crow. I think that makes this deck like just significantly worse. But this deck has like some significant upsides. Like it plays a better grind game than the other deck does, and it's also just cooler. You get to play Dark Arm Dragon. So I think that because there is some upside, and Norlaris actually gives you wins through like even crazier situations. These types of lists, this list should have 2 Norlaris in it. I must have exported it wrong, but the last card in this list is a second Norlaris. But basically, because this deck is so like, I don't know, weak to DD Crow, I don't think we can place it in the tier 1, or at least not highly in the tier 1. There are other Norlaris decks. I think the Norlaris Dragon deck is a tier higher than like the Vayu Turbo decks, but because these decks are like, I don't want to say strictly worse versions of other decks you could play, but they are worse versions of other decks you can play. Let's take a look at some of these other lists. This is a top 8 list from RBET Orlando last year, the end of last year, from Pizza. It's got 45 cards in it. I don't really know why. And this is another Vayu Norlaris list that we had been playtesting a little while, and we had some pretty good results with this one. With the triple reincarnation to reuse Dark Arm Dragon a bunch, felt pretty strong as well. But these types of lists, these Norlaris types of lists, are just super weak to DD Crow, and you can't really do too much about it besides like side Prohibition, side deck dev, and just hope to like rip the DD Crows. Upon second thought, I think I'll put it high tier 2 for now, but we may revisit it. The weakness to DD Crow is pretty significant, and that's kind of the big thing. It's also kind of weak to like random other shit, like just deck dev hitting the Phantoms and stuff. But that's pretty much all I have for the Norlaris things to say on Norlaris. I think this deck has a lot of potential to get better. It would fall under the whole draw spells type vibe, or yeah, definitely draw spells, maybe lockout type vibe. A mix of those game plans. But yeah, definitely a fun deck, definitely a high roll deck, but loses pretty hard to some sideboard situations. You put yourself in bad situations. I don't think it has a great Blackwing matchup too, especially if the Blackwing player is playing multiple copies of Vayu, because you Norlaris them and they could potentially have their Vayu Grave resource. I actually think the Vayu Turbo versions of Norlaris are worse against Blackwings because they can top deck Sirocco, and then Sirocco can answer your threat pretty easily, whereas the Dragon ones, it's much harder for them to out like a Dark Horus off a top deck or a Dark Creator off a top deck. So yeah, that's how I would rank those. Let's go ahead and close all these bad boys, get these Norlaris bitches out of here. And then the next Dragon deck I want to talk about is actually most recently this sort of like Dragon beatdown, Dragon aggro deck. This is the list I have pulled up, but this list sometimes plays Warrior Lady, it sometimes doesn't play Warrior Lady at all, sometimes plays Totem Dragons with Light and Darkness Dragon, or White Knight Dragon, or Yamada Dragon even. There's a wide variety of ways to play this deck. It's ultimately just a Dragon aggro deck. This is the most recent list that I've been playing. This is a list from first place at a 64-person tournament that was played by Jackson from Team on the Grind. You may recognize the team. It's the same team as Hector HG19, who also won RBET. This list is very good. This deck is very good, and I think it's very solidly a tier 1 deck. This deck actually does have a good Blackwing matchup, and it also has a very good Vayu Turbo matchup. So that obviously is going to solidify it in tier 1 for me personally. I actually think because it matches up nicely against Dragon Turbo as well, that I would rank it higher than Dragon Turbo. And the reason it matches up nicely against Dragon Turbo is because if you look at Dragon Turbo, the only way they can play the game is by special summoning Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. That is like a key point in their combo attack. And if you're playing this deck and you summon Drago, it makes it a lot more challenging for them to summon Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. Yes, there are setups to clear the Drago, but they usually involve being forced to go into Bryonic first and ditching cards from hand, and then you can get into like some tricky situations where you have some ways to protect your Drago beyond that. And then on top of that, this deck presents very fast pressure, and Dragon Turbo, despite the namesake, is actually quite a slow deck. It takes a couple turns to get going usually, and this deck can easily just rush you down when you have no defense in 2 turns, and Drago makes sure that Dragon Turbo has no defense. So because of that, the good matchups against, I think, some of the top tier decks, I do think that the Dragon aggro decks deserve a spot in tier 1. And my own personal experience with this deck aside, like, usually when players play this deck who have, like, significant amount of skill, they top with it. Like, we've seen other people top with it. Oh, another thing I should mention is I've seen lists of this deck play Raikou and Caius, but I think that actually kind of fucks with the game plan of the deck. The game plan of the deck, or the game plan of this deck, is more normal summon attack. It's more that top one there. And because of that, I think when you're like setting flip effect monsters, not only are you like slowing your deck down and like kind of cucking your good matchups into Blackwings and Dragon Turbo, you're also just like weakening your deck's main game plan. And I think that deck is like significantly worse. And every time I've tested it, it's been like significantly worse, especially against the, like I said, the high tier decks, especially against Blackwings, Vayu Turbo, and Dragon Turbo. The flip effects are just not good cards into those matchups usually. All right, moving on. Where were we? Closing these guys. Next one, Rescue Cat Synchro. So we're moving into like kind of the Synchro combo territory there, the bottom left corner of the pentagon. Yeah, this is a Synchro combo deck, Rescue Cat Synchro. This is a top 16 list from RBET LA a couple weeks ago. This is a deck that I've historically underrated. I do think it's a fine deck into Blackwings and Vayu Turbo, which are currently the 2 most popular decks. I do think that it is not very good into some other decks, but I think it's fine into Blackwings and Vayu Turbo. And because of that alone, I think I am down to bump it up to tier 2. Just because it has a good matchup against 2 of the most played decks. I don't think the deck is very consistent. I think that is the biggest drawback to playing it. The way the deck works is you try to summon Rescue Cat and then use that to summon 2 Airbellums. The issue is if you've drawn 2 of your Airbellums, you can't do that. And so all of a sudden, your power play is pretty shitty. But I do think that Airbellum is good into the meta of Hello Legacy of Yatagrasus, and I do think that this deck does pretty well against Blackwings and Vayu Turbo, so I am down to put it in tier 2, which is a fair bit higher than I've put it in any of my other previous tier list videos. I would actually rank it higher than Orlaris as of right now. So moving on. Fun deck, definitely a fun deck. It does suffer from the going second, your deck sucks ass unless you open specifically Summoner Monk vibes though. So that's why you have the Cyber Dragons in the main, and that's why you have things like Gores, just comeback cards basically. Flip effect monsters are just really, really shitty versus Vayu Turbo going second, or just really, really shitty versus just about any deck going second. When you're on the receiving end of Raikou flipping and popping your stuff, it is just so much worse. And there's really no way to take back that initiative when your deck is playing literally 8 fucking flip effect monsters. It's just very, very challenging unless you draw specifically like Sidra Caius or like certain combinations of like Monk, Spell, Cold Wave, whatever. You get the idea. Deck sucks going second. That's why it's in tier 2, basically. All right, next deck. We've got X Sabers, which I think is a similar deck to Rescue Cat, but I think it has a worse matchup against Blackwings and Vayu Turbo. So, unfortunately, despite really, really enjoying this deck, I am going to have to put it in tier 3. I do like this deck a lot. I do think it's very strong, and especially when it's comboing, it looks like a tier 1 deck. But as of right now, it's got to be in tier 3. I mean, it hasn't topped in RBET. It hasn't really done anything significant. I actually would put it on the low end of tier 3. That being said, I do think this list that I have in front of you guys is a very strong list. I do think a good player could easily pilot this to a top 8 of an RBET. Do I think it could win an RBET? Maybe. It's possible. It does suffer the same sort of issues of drawing double Airbellum that the other cat decks do, but you also don't have the other like power comeback plays like Side Run to Caius. You're more all in on this sort of like big combo turn. And while that big combo turn is very, very powerful, you're just not going to always be allowed that opportunity to combo off. So definitely a harder deck to play, not only because you need to know how to combo, but because you need to know how to navigate such diverse situations in Edison format, such diverse removal in Edison format. I just think it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and it's definitely not it's not as easy to play as Rescue Cat. And oftentimes you're going to be finding yourself with a very similar payoff as that deck. So cool deck. Definitely try it out. Maybe I could see it going up to tier 2 in the future. It does really well against some of these decks. It does very well versus Dragon Turbo. It does very well versus Frogs and a few other decks, but boy, does this deck get fucking obliterated by Blackwings. So, yeah. Cool deck, though. Definitely a cool guy points. You can still win games versus Blackwings. Just my big piece of advice would be try to resolve a sweeper into a haymaker. So like a trap stun into a catfall troll play. Versus Blackwings is going to give you your best bet, and just play the game trying to set up that situation and build your deck trying to set up that situation. All right, moving on. Next, that was definitely more of the synchro combo, and this next deck is also part of the synchro combo. This is James Ark's Fish, Coelacanth Fish OTK deck that he got second place with at an Ultimate Time Wizard event. I also think that this deck is pretty abysmal into some of the top decks. On top of that, I actually do think that this deck is quite bad into the Dragon decks as well. I don't think it has the same like strength of the mid-ground plays that X-Sabers has into like Dragon Turbo. It is a cool deck. It is a strong deck in its own right. The Frog Engine is very powerful. You get some very uniquely powerful cards like Spiritual Water Art and obviously very strong Caiuses. But I do think this deck suffers from the fact that it has to play so many Garnets, and it has to resolve a 2 tribute monster with a discard with a sweeper in order to combo, which is technically a 5-card combo. And the 5-card combo doesn't even guarantee you lethal in a lot of circumstances. So not only is the skill ceiling incredibly high on this deck, because the combo is different every single time, but it's also a combo that requires a lot of card economy, and most of the better decks can just like rip you apart by the time you're ready to set that up. So I'm going to rank this similarly to X-Sabers, but because it has results, I'm going to place it slightly above X-Sabers. So that's that. Next Frog deck I want to talk about is Frog Heroes. This is the most recent second place list from RBET LA. I think this list is really powerful. I forget the name of the player who plays it. I am so sorry. I apologize, but I'm really bad with names. You know who you are. Comment in the comment section if you got second place with this list. I think this list is good. I think this list is really good. I've looked at Frog Hero lists in the past that weren't playing Legacy and Jar of Greed, and they've always felt like kind of shitty because you'll just draw the wrong half of your deck. You'll just draw the frogs, you won't see the heroes. You'll draw the heroes, you won't see the frogs. You'll draw the monarchs, you won't see the frog. You get what I'm saying? Like, it just won't come together as cleanly as this. But he took out 5 of those fucking like clunker cards, 5 of those just like cards that did not contribute to you seeing your heroes or your frogs. He added Sangan, which gets you every part of your engine, and he added 5 draw traps, and I think that this is an excellent list. Before this list dropped, I actually was not a huge believer in Frog Hero. I would have placed it in tier 2. It historically has bad results at RBETs. I believe he was the only Frog Hero player to make it into the top 16 at RBET LA. It historically underperforms significantly at RBETs. A lot of people enter with this deck and then do poorly. But because of this new list with these draw traps, I am actually inclined to put it in tier 1. I do think the deck is good. I think that someone found a way to make it tier 1, basically. I don't think it's as good as Dragon Turbo or the other Dragon decks. It does have significantly higher representation than both of those decks, but it constantly underperforms when compared to those decks when they are represented. So, yeah, I do think it's a good deck, though. I do think it's really strong. Personally, wouldn't rank it as highly as some of the other players would. And I think this is one of my more controversial takes, that I would rank it lower than the Dragon decks. But, hey, that's what you're here for, the controversial takes. But I love this list. I actually, fuck, man, what was his name? I'm going to pull it up right now. Hold up. David's Hero Frog lists. Man, this guy absolutely crushed it. I think this list is gorgeous. It's a work of art. This is a trend you're going to see in a lot of these lists, is the triple Legacy of Yugioh. This is kind of the 2024 story, is how many draw traps can you fit in your deck, and how well do they support, or how well do they do in your deck specifically. And in Frog Hero, they do exceptionally well because there's a lot of powerful cards and powerful synergies that you draw into off of them. So, good shit, man. I actually really can't wait to try this. I was never a fan of Frog Hero before this list, and I'm actually excited to try this list for the first time in the next week or so. So, cool stuff. Definitely a cool deck if you're into that type of thing. I would say this deck falls weirdly into normal summon attack, but also in synchro combo. But instead of synchro, I would say like fusion combo with like the Miracle Fusion. But I think it's more in the normal summon attack camp, which I will say, I personally, as a player, have a huge bias towards the normal summon attack decks. I feel like they are the best decks in Edison format because they have inherent value going second. So if your deck can play a normal summon attack game plan, it is probably a better deck than the decks that are like setting flip effect monsters, and that's the only way that they can accrue value. All right, moving on. Diva Hero. Diva Hero is a very similar deck to the Frog Hero deck, but instead of going for the frogs, it goes for the synchro plays, and it tries to focus on using Deep Sea Diva as your premier water to get you 2 waters in the graveyard. This is Kimon, I believe is his name. Kimon's top 20 ladder deck that he's held a top 20 ladder position with and a 80% win rate or whatever for a very long time with. And every time I play this list, I would like to say that I feel like this is the definitive Diva Hero list in my mind. I don't think I've ever played a Diva Hero list that feels as consistent or as strong as this one. Every other Diva Hero list I've played has felt more clunky, more not so great. I'm curious to see if this is a deck that could benefit from the legacy technology, but given the nature of the Garnets in this deck, the Malicious, the Gilman, I don't think you really want to shove draw traps into here because drawing cards is a little bit scary when you risk drawing into some of the cards that could fuck up your power plays, more or less. That being said, I do think that this list in particular has felt just amazing as is, and I haven't really wanted to change it, so yeah, no, great stuff. I even have it built in paper. I think this deck is phenomenal. The way it works is you go for your big synchro plays, you don't brick on multiple Caius, you rarely brick on Dead Miracles early, it trims a lot of the fat from the other Diva Hero list. You have the E-Telly power play, as well as the Greffer, the Dad. You have so many like middle ground power plays or like 2-turn OTK setups. And then you have Fiendish Chain to negate your opponent's comeback play. If you stick a Dad and you set a Fiendish Chain, or even if you stick something as simple as like a Bryonic with a Fiendish Chain, it becomes very, very, very difficult for your opponent to win. And it's easy to do Bryonic at parity with like E-Telly Stratos turn 1 or going second. The sideboard is also very well crafted. He has 9 cards in and 9 cards out versus all of the top represented decks in the meta, which is pretty genius sideboard building. Go ahead and check out the edisonformat.com Discord. He has gone over a sideboard plan on this deck in detail in there. I think this is one of the most beautifully designed lists, and I am actually going to put it in tier 1. I actually think this deck is a tier 1 deck as well. Diva Hero. I think Diva Hero is better than Diva Frogs. Or not Diva Frogs, sorry, Hero Frogs. Because I think it's more aggressive. I think it's not as slow out of the gates. Sometimes the Hero Frog deck can get like put on the back foot early and then just can never come back against the other normal summon attack decks in the format. This deck, not only is it a synchro combo deck, but it's also a normal summon attack deck because you've got like Card Trooper, Stratos, Greffer. You can play that normal summon attack roll going second as well. It's faster, it's more aggressive. It's just really punishing when your opponent makes a mistake against it. You have more power cards overall. I do think it is a tier 1 deck. All right, moving on to the next deck. Next deck is Diva Hero Zombie. So this is a similar deck. This is Jake Exo's Diva Hero Zombie deck that he got top 16 at RBET LA with. He's also topped previous RBETs with this. He's earned his invite with it as well. I think this deck is pretty cool. We should probably talk about all the different zombie variations at the same time. These decks are much more the synchro combo than the normal summon attack decks. You can attack with these little guys, but you're not killing anyone anytime soon by poking them to death with a Pyramid Turtle. Yeah, the damage will add up, but eventually you're going to have to kill them with a big synchro combo play, usually. That being said, I do think this deck is quite good. I do think it is a little bit slower than the Diva Hero deck. I do think it has less explosive plays because you lack that emergency teleport and you have these 5 additional normal summons in the 2 Goblin Zombies, 3 Pyramid Turtles. You also have this extra normal summon Zombie Masters card. It's such ass card. It's so bad. But that being said, this deck is incredibly explosive, and when it does pull off that synchro combo, it is devastating. That being said, there are a few other builds that you can play of zombies. This one is much more of the normal summon attack style that plays E-Telly. This is Zabo's list from top 4 of RBT rulers last year, I believe. And then this is the more Welly Dad focused list. This is Zyver's Welly Dad list. I've played this list extensively, and this is all in combo, balls to the wall, like just super, super aggressive. I have a video playing this deck, and it shows off the combo potential of this deck and how quickly it can combo kill people out of nowhere too. So there's like variable degrees of like combo versus like how like aggro or control-y you want to play. Control is not the right word, but I'm just like at a loss for words right now. I think I'm gonna group all of the zombie decks together though, because I think they all kind of suffer from that same issue of like Goblin Zombie is a Sangan that you have to normal summon, which is slow. It takes you a turn to get going basically versus everything. And I don't think Zombies has a terrible Blackwing matchup, and I think it has an okay Value Turbo matchup, it has an okay Frogs matchup, but I think the inherent power of the engine is just a little bit low for me. I think it's just a little bit low. Let's go ahead and rank these. I think for me, I'm gonna have to put Diva Zombies in tier 2, at the top of tier 2, and I'm also gonna have to put Instant Zombies. Oh, man, I really do like Instant Zombies. I think it is better than Diva Zombies overall versus like the other aggro decks of the format, and I think it has better comeback plays in general. I think Diva Zombies, when it starts to fall behind, it just like cannot come back. But these two decks suffer from the same issue that Norlaris suffers from as well, in that they're kind of weak to DD Crow too. All three of these decks really. This one has the best ability to play through DD Crow with DDR, and this one's a little bit faster than the other decks. And it has a lot of like crazy comeback plays. So I don't know. I don't know where I'd place the Welly Dad deck, because obviously it's like you see Royal Oppression, and if you don't have an out, you just fucking lose. So there's that. I'd probably put the Welly Dad list a little bit lower because it's a little bit less resilient. It can't play an interactive game as well. I'd probably put it over Rescue Cat. So let's select all of these and the Rescue Cat and the Norlaris. Now let's move them down a bit, but I do think these are all tier 2 strategies as of right now. I do think that Zombies struggle sometimes with the Frog decks. The Diva Zombies do. The Instant Zombies are better against the Frog decks, but it's still like questionable. Diva Hero kind of beats up on the zombie deck because Absolute Zero is really good versus zombies. And then as for the other tier 1 strategies, the dragon decks fucking destroy zombies. It's like one of the best matchups for dragons, because if you just summon a Drago, you just win the game. Like, they can't special summon any of their dudes. So yeah, that's pretty much that. All right, moving on. Zombies is a fun deck though. I think it's a deck that can clearly win tournaments. Like, it's won multiple RBETs. It's just had a pretty rough year with regards to results. Only a couple tops here and there. I think a lot of the better players have set zombies aside right now, and a lot of the better zombie players out there, Beast Mode, one of them, has taken a little bit of a break from competitive play, and the people who are great with zombies, like JakeXO and stuff, they've been having consistent top cut results. So it just goes to show that there's a lot of skill in playing the deck, and I think it could easily go up a tier if you are a qualified player, to say the least. All right, moving on. Next strategy is Chain Burn. I always talk about this one in every tier list, but nobody ever plays this deck because it has sort of a negative stigma to it. Most people don't enjoy playing against this deck. I personally love playing against this deck because it's a little mini game. It's super fun. But generally speaking, a lot of people dislike this deck because there's just a negative stigma to Burn in general in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think this deck is super good. I think it's like really, really underrated. I think it's like massively underrated. Like, I think it is probably tier 2. Probably. It all depends on how much Royal Decree is floating around. Like, if there's a lot of main deck Royal Decrees, but we just don't see that often, you know? I actually think this deck is a little bit in the same tier as like Norlaris, but Norlaris is weak to a card, DD Crow, that's at 3. Whereas Chain Strike, Chain Burn decks are weak to Royal Decree, but Royal Decree's at 2. And so, like, your opponent could even have Royal Decree and just, like, maybe not even see it, you know? I actually think, this might be a hot take, but I actually think Chain Burn is even better than Cat Synchro in Edison format. I think Cat Synchro is a good deck. I think it's solid in the metagame, but actually, you know what? No, I lied. Chain Burn has to be worse than Rescue Cat because of the Blackwing matchup specifically. Chain Burn is not. I think the only thing holding Chain Burn back from being tier 1 is that it's not very good versus Blackwings. But it would be a tier 1 deck if it had a good Blackwing matchup, basically. But it just fucking doesn't. What is this, Norlaris? Yeah, it's better than Norlaris for sure. Norlaris might even get bumped down to the top of tier 3. It's just such a weird deck to place because like it has those crazy draws that like Vayu Turbo and Dragon Turbo have with like Future Fusion or Grepher or whatever, but it also has this other half of the deck which is like worse like than those decks. So you're like you have to really want to play Norlaris to justify playing it. And I don't think it's a bad deck by any means because it has those powerful synergies that those other decks also have, but it doesn't have like the full range of those powerful synergies that those other decks have. So you're like playing a version of a deck that already exists, but like shot in the foot, kind of, if that makes sense. All right, moving on. Chainburn's a good deck. You just try to generate chain links and get value out of Accumulated Fortune, Chain Strike, and all of your fun little draw power. Shout out Frog Slicer for designing this main deck. This is my side deck, but I do think Frog Slicer absolutely knocked it out of the park with this main deck. I have never wanted to change a single card. All right, moving on. Gemini. This is a BK Kids Club top 16 list. I think there's another Gemini list I have pulled up here. Yep. This one doesn't play Gigaplant. This is my personal Chaos Gemini list. I do think that BK Kids Club is the only person really workshopping Gemini right now. And he's a little bit stuck in, I think, some of these cards that just don't need to be in the deck. Like, Toon Magician is a fucking dog shit card. Like, Gigaplant is good, but ironically, I think the deck performs better without it when it focuses more on the Chaos angle and being able to play Royal Oppression in the main deck. I think having a Gemini Spark Dark Valkyria deck, where if you go first and you normal summon Dark Valkyria, you move a little bit away from the Synchro combo and a little bit more towards the normal summon attack. And I think that normal summon attack as a primary game plan in Edison format is always going to be better because you're not going to be as weak to Royal Oppression. You're not going to be as weak to like common bullshit. And you're also going to be good both going first and going second. You're not going to need specific combinations of cards when there's no card filtering in Edison. You get to play just like a more low to the ground consistent game plan. And you still get all of the same like power of like Ultimate Offering in this deck as well. So I do think that in order for Gemini to move up a tier for me, I'm going to place it in tier 3. Where is that? I'm using Gigaplant, but Gigaplant doesn't necessarily have to be in the deck. I'm going to place it below X-Saber. I think it's worse than X-Sabers. I think it's pretty... This style of list is pretty bad into Blackwings. And I think if you went more towards this style of list with the Spark control, could be a lot better. Could be a lot more cooking happening. So definitely try out the Chaos Gemini or try out different variations of the deck. Don't feel like anything is a sacred cow. One thing that's really cool about this list is that Reinforced Truth gets you to Soldier, which gets you to either a light or dark, and so your Chaos Sorcerer is very consistent in this list, which is quite nice. There's probably more you could do in this type of deck, like main decking Return, or even Dark Armed or something like that, but as of right now, I feel like this is my 40 cards for this build, and I've been pretty happy every time I played this deck. It feels pretty powerful, so I could see it going up to like tier 2 and just being above like Rescue Cow even. If someone better than me could like lab the Chaos version a little bit more. There's a lot of like just like chaff in here, like this random breaker, like why is that in this deck? I don't know, but yeah, I think this deck could definitely be improved upon more. It has the ability to move up, but as of right now, I don't feel comfortable placing it higher than X-Saber or the Fish deck. Moving on, Six Samurai. So Six Samurai is a deck that like I've always held kind of near and dear to my heart, and in previous tier lists, I ranked it really, really low. This is a newer build of Six Samurai that I've been playing. I played it on a video a couple days ago. Check it out if you haven't already. Testing out Triple Legacy plus Triple Jar of Greed in this deck. Now, this deck kind of masquerades as a normal summon attack deck, but it's also a lockout deck, which I think are like kind of two of the best game plans in Edison format. I think the combo game plans are rarely as strong as the normal summon attack or the lockout game plans. And I do think that playing the 6 draw traps has added a significant consistency boost to this deck that it definitely lacked. This has become one of my favorite decks to play in the meantime. I am looking at building it in paper. It is a very, very fun deck. And I like the way that it uses Level Limit Area B and Gravity Bind because these two cards are OP as fuck versus Blackwings. Like if you just stick one of these, like Blackwing cannot they just can't win. They just can't win. It's like so hard for them to do anything. You got to have something for the Bryonic, of course. That's always a problem. But yeah, generally speaking, I've had a much higher opinion of this deck ever since trying out this new list. and I think that it even has more potential to be innovated and cooked with. So we're going to go ahead and find the Six Samurai icon. Where the fuck is this shit? Yeah. Six Samurai. Grandmaster. There we are. All right. I think pretty highly of this deck. I actually think it's better than Gemini. I know it's like may not seem very high, like but I think that this is higher than I've ever placed it before, and I've been pretty happy with it. I think it has a solid matchup versus dragons, and I think it has a solid matchup versus frogs, and I think it has a solid matchup versus Blackwings as well. Vayu Turbo is actually a very good matchup for Six Samurai. So while the Blackwing matchup is still not favorable, the fact that you do have a good matchup into Vayu Turbo that's pretty good. That's the second most played deck. I actually think this deck might be even higher because of its metagame spread. I think it's possible if someone good were to pilot this deck into a tournament, they'd have pretty consistent results. That being said, because it doesn't quite have the results yet, I am going to put it lower than both X-Saber and the Fish deck in Tier 3. But my opinion on this deck has definitely changed over the last few days. All right, moving on. Fairies. This is another one of my favorite decks. This is a list that I have incorporated a lot of technology from Tommy's most recent top 16 list into, namely the main deck Consecrated Light and the sideboarded Herald of Purple Lights and sideboarded Decrees plus Chalices. It still has a lot of my personal preference cards like Return from the Different Dimension, the one main deck Depression, Thunder King's in the side for Dragon Turbo, Grand Mole. I think Grand Mole's insane in this deck, but against a field of all Blackwings, main deck and Consecrated Light is pretty fucking broken. Just having a game 1 auto win versus Blackwings is insanely nice. I think that I would try to build more around this. I would maybe try to incorporate Starlight Roads or Decrees or some sort of fucking way to protect you from Icarus attack in the main deck. If you were going to go the main deck Consecrated Light route. But normally when I'm playing this deck, I like to main deck the Grand Mole over the Consecrated Light. This deck is always a bit of an enigma. It does really well when good players play it. It consistently tops when good players play it. Whenever Carpath plays it, or whenever ProStorm plays it, or whenever some of the top players, the players who know life this game or know life this deck specifically play it, they do really, really well. But that being said, it has a really low floor. If you're, how do I say this? Newer, but not just newer, also not really fully fleshed out with the concept of game plans, because this deck masquerades as a normal summon attack deck, but it's not. It is a lockout deck. The idea of this deck is to summon Christia and make it so your opponent can't play, or to run them out of monsters with DD Warrior Lady, Dimensional Alchemist looping. You're trying to lock your opponent out of the game. It definitely masquerades as something that it's not, but it has, I think, the two game plans that I think are strongest in Edison format. I do think this is a tier 1 deck, but I do want to give a little asterisk. I think this deck is worse if you're newer. I think if you're not as familiar with the game, this deck is going to be very hard for you to play. Just because it's a challenge. This is a very similar list. This is a chaos list that Carpath plays. I also agree that these are functionally the same deck in a lot of different ways. The only difference is he has some dark monsters here, like Caius's, which help you in certain circumstances. But you can either play with or without the Caius's. The deck is looking to do the same thing, which is just summon Christia and lock out the opponent. And I would place both of these decks in tier 1. But I do think that you need to practice a ton with these decks to really get a feel for what's right, and not just practice, but analyze and shit too. On top of that, analyze your matches objectively, and it's a hard deck to play. There's a lot of guides on the channel if this is a deck that interests you. But definitely, I stand by what I said early on in Edison format. I do think it's a tier 1 deck. I think it has a great matchup versus Blackwings. And I think that in order to be a tier 1 deck, you have to have a great matchup versus Blackwings. Moving on from these is another fairy deck, which is a Valhalla fairy deck. This deck is fun. I've been playing it a lot recently in paper, and I have had a blast. I don't think it's as good as the other fairy deck, but I think the skill ceiling is a little bit lower. You don't need to be as plugged in to play this deck. You don't need to be as dialed. you can make a mistake and it's probably going to be fine. Honestly, it's not as complicated as the other fairy deck is. It does have a lot of the same like complex lines, but the card Valhalla and the card Tethius are pretty forgiving if they resolve. There's variations of this deck playing Legacy of Yatagrasu, the Galaxia build that's been floating around. He's made a couple top 16 performances with that list. I think that this deck is on the cusp of being very, very popular and very, very good. But because it just doesn't have results, I'm gonna have to put it lower than the other fairy list. The other fairy list has had a lot of results. I mean, like it tops every time a good player plays it, and it often wins. Like it won RBET Rulers a couple years ago. That being said, a lot of people have abandoned the deck. Not for any reason in particular, but probably just because it's a headache to play. Let me see. That's why I don't play it as much as I used to. It's a lot of work. Okay, let's get this guy here and these guys. Let's see if we can get these guys moved over. I don't know where to place Valhalla. It's kind of a tricky one. It's probably not that bad into Blackwings, but it's not like great into Blackwings. I'd probably place it around the chain burn area. Yeah. It's pretty weak to certain sideboard cards, and it can brick a lot more than your average fairy deck can. It's a lot less consistent than the average fairy list. I would say it's probably below Chain Burn, above Norlaris, just from my experience with these two different decks. I think this deck is much more threatening than Norlaris is, because an unanswered Tethius usually immediately wins a game, whereas even a resolved Norlaris isn't going to win the game. So, yeah, I think it's a little bit better than the Norlaris decks, and Christia is just fucking crazy, just auto-wins some matchups. But I think this deck is a little bit less consistent than the other fairy lists, so I'm going to have to put it a little bit lower for now. The second this deck gets results, it's going straight to tier 1, but it doesn't have the results quite yet, so I'm going to have to pass on giving it results, or giving it a higher tier as of right now. The next fairy list I want to talk about is Christia Sworn. I think this is also, this deck, like, I'm so on the fence about it, but I have to put it at the bottom of tier 1. It just consistently has put up results, and although I feel like this deck is super high roll, this is definitely a mill prage / draw spells deck. The fact of the matter is Christia and Herald of Orange Light are fucking insane cards, so it doesn't really matter exactly the skeleton you're playing them in. They are tier 1 level cards. I think this deck even has probably a better matchup into the frog builds than the regular fairy deck does, and it probably has a better matchup into... No, that's it. I think it just does better into frogs. But I think it's worse into Blackwings, and I think it's worse into dragons. Quackimera Drago does put a big hurt on this deck, and you have significantly less main deck outs than the average fairy list does, so... yeah, a cool deck. This is Masha Rose's second place list from RBET 2 this season. I think she pretty much nailed everything I want in a Christia Sworn list. List looks very solid. Looks like it has everything you need. Sopal for the grave control, Beckonings for the recursion, triple Christia because it's broken, double Jane to beat over Blackwing monsters. Yeah, this list looks solid. I think if I was going to play Christia Sworn deck and I was not going to play the Junk Synchron version, I would definitely play the Masha Rose second place list. Solid mill prage deck. Very fun deck to play if you like flipping cards off the top of your deck and placing them in the graveyard. All right, moving on. Pure Lightsworn. So a little bit less mill prage and draw spells, a little bit more normal summon attack and mill prage. I do like Pure Lightsworn. This is a second place list from the most recent online RBET. Deck is solid. It just plays really well. A lot of the cards are fucking powerful. One thing that's been on my mind lately is how difficult it is to just out a resolved JD. That is hard. It's very difficult to do. One thing about this list too that's very nice is this Glorious Illusion, this ×2 tech, allows to support triple Celestia, and this card is busted. Like, this is just an insanely strong card. So yeah, while I don't feel as highly as I do about this deck as I do about Christia Sworn, I do think this is a high tier 2 deck. I do think it is a high tier 2. With a few more performances like the last online RBET, it could be a tier 1 deck. I think the lists are getting more and more tuned. This list is very strong. I like this list a lot. I haven't personally played it, but when watching it during the RBET, I thought it looked very clean, especially the sideboard. The triple consecrated with the double decree and the double my body as a shield against Blackwings is just so nuts. I think this build specifically has a good matchup versus Blackwings, especially when factoring the post-board games. And so because it has such a good matchup versus Blackwings, I'm going to put it high tier 2 for now. The last RBET was the first RBET that pure Lightsworn has really done anything at. But if it does more in future RBETs, I could see it being bumped up to tier 1 as well. All right, moving on. Next Lightsworn deck is Lightsworn Machina. This is a list that I've messed around with. There's 45 cards here, but I'm sure you could like slim it down to 40 somehow. I think that this has a lot of potential as a deck. We've seen other Lightsworn Machina decks like this one here. This is Jafaro Stevens, top 8 Ultimate Time Wizard Lightsworn Machina deck. This one plays less Lightsworns, no JD. It's much more like the ×2 lists of old, but it does play those triple legacy, and this looks a fair bit more tuned than this garbage pile you're seeing in front of us. But ultimately, I think that there is a world where JD plus Machina Fortress in the same deck is actually pretty good. So I'm willing to put Machina Lightsworn. Where is the fucking thing? This is going to be for both of those decks, Machina Lightsworn. Even though JD is only in one of them, I think that they're good. I think it's tier 1. It does very well against Blackwings. I think it's actually better right now than the fairy decks. Like the machine decks are better than the fairy decks. A lot of people are cutting Cyber Dragon for some fucking reason. And so that helps. A lot of these decks up here don't play Cyber Dragon. So the Machina cards are just like insane. For some reason, Machina Fortress is just like great versus Vayu Turbo, Blackwings, Dragons, and Heroes. It's just good versus all of the decks above it. That being said, the tournaments that this deck has showed up at, it has not yet won. I think that that's like the one thing that's holding me back from placing it higher, is it just hasn't won a tournament. I know Disaster Dragon or the like Dragon aggro decks also hasn't won, but I know from my own personal experience and my own personal bias that this deck is absolutely better than the decks below it. But I think the Machina Lightsworn decks has the potential to be even better than the Diva Hero decks. Diva Hero doesn't necessarily win tournaments either. Frog Heroes won like one tournament, one major. Diva Heroes won one major. Machina hasn't won one yet. Yeah, it's tough. I'm gonna put Machina Lightsworn below the Absolute Zero decks for now. But there's so much room for innovation with this deck. I think this deck has a lot of untapped potential for sure. I don't think that this is necessarily the final finish line. And no, Jinzo. Jinzo's not what I wanted to talk about next. I was gonna say this. That being said, that brings me to the most recent undefeated Machina Lightsworn deck, which was also playing Quick Draw, from Nima, and this went undefeated in Swiss at RBET Los Angeles. And I think that this is like the next step in that innovation in those last lists that we saw. Quick Draw Dandelion, it improves a lot of those circumstances that were otherwise weakened, and it gives the deck another angle of attack. And this deck definitely went undefeated for a reason. I mean, it's just a fucking fantastic deck. So I am actually going to place Quick Draw Machina pretty highly. I'm going to place it even higher than Machina Lightsworn. Just because going undefeated in a major tournament like that that's something to be said. I think that there's been some weird like outlier moments of like of Quick Draw decks like going undefeated. There was like the one where Quick Draw went like 10-0 at Ultimate Time Wizard Vegas, and then this one here where went undefeated in Swiss at RBT LA. And I think that this might be the best iteration. Fucking Jinzo, get out of here. This might be the best iteration of Quick Draw because it's an iteration that's good against Blackwings. Most iterations of Quick Draw are not good against Blackwings, and so I think that this is up there with the top. Let's just talk about this Jinzo shit before I keep clicking on it accidentally. Jinzo deck. Jinzo deck is scary. Every time I play against Jinzo deck, I'm like, damn, I don't want to lose to this. I think it's better than Norlaris, better than Valhalla Fairy, Better than Chain Burn, probably better than Rescue Cat, but it's in that same sort of like feeling of like if you draw too many of your garnets, might not feel too good. Yeah, let's do that. I think it's better than Rescue Cat, just because I think like drawing your garnets is not nearly as bad in the Jinzo deck as it is in the Rescue Cat deck because of the Machina cards. And you have like other conversions and shit too. And there's like a bunch of ways to just like instantly win the game in this deck. This is not the perfect list by any means. There's been a bunch of like variations of this list that have like topped like 70, 80 person tournaments here and there, or even won some, but this is just a list I had in my builder when talking about it. I haven't worked on this list in a while. I haven't worked on this deck in a while, but I do think that this list has a lot of potential, or this deck has a lot of potential, probably more potential than Rescue Cat, just because you have like so many fucking broken cards in this deck. All right, moving on. Yeah, so we talked about Machina Quick Draw. I think that Machina Quick Draw is currently the best version of Quick Draw, but there's some other versions. There is the Volcanic version. This is a list that James Ark had worked on that I had made a few changes to. I don't think that this deck is as good as the Machina builds because drawing multiple shells, drawing multiple rockets is ass. Whereas like drawing multiple fortresses and drawing multiple gear frames is totally fine. So it's like you have the same sort of like functionality, but you have extra brick factors for no fucking reason. I do think this deck is good, though. I do think this deck has a lot of potential. I'm trying to think of where to place it. It's probably worse than zombies. But it's probably better than like specifically Welly Dad. Is it better than Welly Dad? Huh. So this is where I want to put it, like right there. But I don't know how accurate that is really. Yeah, I think that that's right. I think that works for me personally. Move these guys up a bit. Yeah, I think that it's worse than Diva Zombie and worse than Instant Zombie. I've played this deck a fair bit. I built it in paper. I played it with my playtesting group. I've made like 3 or 4 videos on it recently that you guys can go check out. And I think this deck is great. I think it's really strong. I think it has the potential to like win tournaments if you have some decent draws and you don't break a million fucking volcanic shells and shit. But that being said, it's a little normal summon heavy. It's a little bit weak because you do start at 6,500 life points, so that makes you very weak to, or 7,000 life points or whatever. You're pretty weak to Blackwings, and you can't be in tier 1 if you're weak to Blackwings. That's just kind of the thing. It's kind of a synchro combo deck, but also kind of a Millprage deck, but also kind of a lockout deck. It's like it's a weird spot. It's a weird spot where it can play a bunch of different game plans, which is makes it really fun because every game is like sort of different. But yeah, ultimately I think it's just a little too weak to Blackwings. All right, moving on. This is like just a conglomerate quick draw like mood board with cards that have done well in quick draw lists recent history. Spirit Reaper was in the fucking undefeated Time Wizard one. Trapstone was also in the undefeated Time Wizard one. I know Freya's had a lot of success with Triple Avarice, with Triple Debris and Triple Kaias. On top of all that, I just think there's a billion ways to play this deck. This is just kind of like the mood board, the Edison mood board of how to play quick draw. Just dumb it down to 40 cards, cut whichever card you brick on the most. It's all arbitrary, honestly. But yeah, this deck is, again, I think just too much weaker than its variants. I'm trying to think where it compares to some of these other decks. It is bad against Blackwings. Like, it is pretty actively bad. It's probably better than Jinzo, worse than Welly Dad, I would say, for like this type of like quick draw list. Can it win tournaments? Yes, and that's the weird thing. This deck has this sneaking like ability to go undefeated, and it's just happened like quite a few times this year, like 3 or 4 times this year. It just goes undefeated randomly, And not a lot of decks, like even Blackwings, like when it wins a tournament, it's usually like X1, X2, you know what I mean? But when Quick Draw wins, it wins by a landslide. So, I don't know. It's weird. It might be better to play the original list than the Volcanic list, but they think the Volcanic list is better into Blackwings. I'm not even really sure. It's all kind of arbitrary, this middle tier 2 area. Let's just move on. All right, next deck. Amaryllis. Another similar plant deck. I actually think this deck is fucking amazing. This is the top 4 list. I believe it was Marshall's top 4 list from RBET LA, if my notes are correct. Yeah, this deck's fucking great. I don't know. This is a tier 1 deck. This is a tier 1 deck, and I know I said Dragon Turbo was going to be the only tier 1 deck with a bad Blackwing matchup. I think Amaryllis also has a bad Blackwing matchup, but it's not that bad. It's like maybe like 51-49. Like if you're playing on top of your game and shit. Yeah, I think it's a tier 1 deck. I would place it higher than Christia Sworn and Machina Quick. I would place it. It's probably the highest. I have a lot of respect for this deck. I think it's hard to play against. I think it's hard to play. I think it's very powerful. I think it has good matchups across the board. It's good against every deck because it can just pressure you really fast. And even if you put up like a good threat like Absolute Zero or JD, it's always vulnerable to Mark of the Rose. So it has counterplay versus everything unless you OTK it. It gets to play Phoenix Wing Windblast, which is one of the best trap cards in the game. This is going to be one of those hard to place ones. I do think it is better than Christia Sworn, and I do think it is personally better than Fairies right now. Although Fairies is insane versus Blackwings. Blackwings are still not the most popular. Like, they're the most popular, but they're not popular enough for Fairies to really take that second place slot quite yet. Is it better than Machina Lightsworn? Yeah, I think Amaryllis is better than Machina Lightsworn. Is it better than Machina Quick Draw? Yeah, I think it is. I think it is better than Machina Quick Draw, and I also think it's better than Machina or Hero Frogs. I actually think Amaryllis is even better than fucking. Let me select a different image. What's going on here, bro? All right, I actually think it is better than Hero Frogs. I think Titanial is just a fucking crazy card. Carpath really knocked it out of the park with that original Amaryllis list. I mean, like we're like very, very few cards off of his original list. Miracle Fertilizer being the new tech. I actually have another Amaryllis list pulled up here that I can show you guys. This is my personal Amaryllis list that I've been playing. This is a Quick Draw Amaryllis list that plays only one trap card. And I've actually been having a blast playing this. This has been even more successful than these other Amaryllis lists. It's felt much more consistent thanks to the upstarts and the less amount of normal summons. It's turned much more into instead of a mill Prage deck, it's turned much more into a draw spells deck. I've tried to shift the game plan away from needing to resolve mills in order to get anywhere, and shifted it more towards like I'm going to draw into Trade-In and Titanial and then Miracle Fertilizer it back and then just do that until my opponent's dead, because I think that that's the best thing this deck can do. And then on top of that, it has Quick Draw Dandy, which I think is just a way to unbrick the bad hands in Amaryllis. If you look at this deck list, pardon me, I had to sneeze. If you look at this deck list, you'll notice that there's a shitload of fucking normal summons. And drawing multiple Dandy, drawing multiple Miller guys, it's like just a very easy way to brick. Whereas in this, there's less normal summons, so you're not bricking on multiple normal summons that often. You usually have like 1 or 2 normal summon plays, and then you're also not conflicting with your Miracle Fertilizer Hidden Armory play as well as frequently, and Quick Draw Dandy just plays really nicely with those cards. So this is a list I've had a lot of success with personally in my personal testing groups, and I've also enjoyed the sideboard a little bit. I do want to take some ideas from Marshall's sideboard, namely the Consecrated Lights, and import them here. But I've had a lot of fun playing this main deck here, so something worth trying out for sure. I think this deck is tier 1. I don't know. I don't think it's better than Diva Hero. I think it's like, from my own personal experience, I think Diva Hero is better than Amaryllis. I think Amaryllis is better than Hero Frog. And I think the results would go to say that. I mean, Amaryllis has significantly less players entering with it, and it has more consistent or equally consistent results as Hero Frog. So it's like you have less people playing it, and it's doing just as good. Like, it's hard to make the argument that it's worse, right? It hasn't yet won a major event, but it has so many like random second places. Like, And it's like, okay, you know, all I had to do was win a coin flip here or there, like not misplay here or there, and second place would have been a win, you know. So I feel pretty confident placing Amaryllis high in tier 1. I placed it in tier 1 in my last tier list. A lot of people said, like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But nah, the deck just continues to keep performing, so here we are. All right, moving on. Probably the highest placing plant deck on my tier list is Amaryllis as of right now. Flamvels. This is Swifty's most recent 9th place Flamvel list. Once again, very similar to the Rescue Cat deck list with all the flip effect monsters. I think this deck's solid. I think it's pretty good. It's the best Imperial Iron Wall deck, and Imperial Iron Wall is good against, you'll notice, almost every single tier 1 deck except like Lightsworn and Blackwing specifically. Even there it has some applications. I think Flamvel's pretty good. I think it's pretty good. I'd probably play it before I played any of these decks down here. So like any of these decks. Ah, shit, I can't select anything. Fuck me, right? This, and that. Any of these decks. I'd probably play Flamvel before I played any of those. But I'd probably play Quick Draw before I played Flamvel. Maybe. It depends. Flamvel's cool. It's a cool deck. It suffers from being horrendously slow and having garnets and needing to play flip effects to support your big plays, but Rekindling is a hell of a card, and so is Imperial Iron Wall. I don't know. I always rate Flamvel way higher than it probably should be rated. Like, realistically, it should probably be, like, down here. Yeah. But I don't know. I think it's a fine deck. This one's tough. Let me know in the comments below where you would rank Flamvel. I always rate it higher than it probably should be. I think that it's probably worse than, like, these decks up here. Like, just, if you ran a bunch of games with Flamvel and you ran a bunch of games with these other decks would probably just win more into the field than Flamvel. But Flamvel does have, like, a decent Blackwing matchup, and it does have a pretty good Vayu Turbo matchup, and those are the two most popular decks. It's just really fucking shit versus Frogs. And it, like, is really bad versus Dragon Turbo unless you can get, like, a Stardust Iron Wall setup going. And even that's just, like, usually not enough. Sucks versus Christia. Sucks versus Machines. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tricky one. It's a tricky one to place. I'd say I'm gonna put it at a tentative tier 3 for now. A tentative top of tier 3. I may be underrating it. Just let me know in the comments. Alright, next deck. Moving on, we've got Vayu Turbo. This is the most recent top 4 list. And this is almost card for card Spooner Boys top 4 list. So this is 2 basically top 4 lists. Give or take a card or 2 here or there. I think this is the future of Vayu Turbo. The triple Greffer with the other list played Elfin to be able to ladder into Armor Master with the double book. This list instead plays Necrogardna and Return over Elfin and Solemn Judgment, but those are the 2 card changes. I think this is like a pretty good stock list for Vayu Turbo if you need one to copy. This is where I would go because this is the list that has been placing the highest as of lately. It's very consistent. You have a lot of spell cards. You're not super slow on the traps. It does have 5 flip effects, so it makes you a little bit of a mill Prage deck. But I think Vayu Turbo had its moment at the end of 2023 where it was doing really well. It won a lot of tournaments. And it still does top quite a bit. It is the second most played deck as of right now. I think it would be disingenuous to place this anywhere but tier 1. I think this is a tier 1 deck. A lot of people will say, like, will compare Vayu Turbo to Blackwings, which makes sense, right? Because the core combination of cards is Blackwing monsters. You do play the 7 Blackwing monsters. In Spooner Boy's build, I believe he played 8. So it's interesting to compare the two, but I think the game plans are very different. I actually think this deck is more mill Prage, and Blackwings is definitely normal summon attack. But I think Vayu Turbo is definitely more mill Prage. You've got, like in this deck, there's 8 ways to mill cards, or 8 millers. And you've also got Dark Greffer and Armageddon, which is like targeted milling. But even with the targeted milling, you're hoping that your mills are good. Because if your mills are bad with this deck, like let's say you mill like Dad Burial or whatever, it becomes very difficult to win. As opposed to if you mill like Vayu Sirocco or whatever. It's probably one of the best decks to abuse Dad and Burial, so obviously that's that's pretty strong. And it's one of the best decks to abuse Deck Devastation Virus as well. In these lists, they've been citing card destruction as a way to counter Dragon Turbo, which is normally a bad matchup for Value Turbo. I'm not sure where I'd place this deck, but I think it is worse than this is gonna get some people being like, what the fuck? But I actually think it's worse than Dragons. I think Dragons is better. I think both versions of Dragons are better. I actually think Amaryllis is arguably better than Value Turbo. I think they're like kind of comparable. I rank Diva Hero really highly. I don't know. A lot of people don't rank this deck that highly, but the more I've played with Kemon's build, and the more I've tested with it, it's felt really strong. Obviously, the results mean I can't place it as high as Value Turbo, and same thing with Amaryllis. Value Turbo just has a lot more tournament wins. But that being said, Value Turbo also has a shit ton more representation. So like, if you took the same number of people who were playing Value Turbo and you just handed them an Amaryllis deck, would Amaryllis win more tournaments? Probably. Like, that's just like kind of my thought process on it. I don't think the strength of Value Turbo warrants its representation in terms of numbers. I don't think it's measurably better than Amaryllis, and I personally think it's worse than Diva Hero. But that's just been my experience playing with and against the deck over the last 4 years. I know a lot of other people have had like different experiences with this deck. And yeah, it's one of those decks that's like kind of hard to rate because I think it has quite a low floor, while it does have a high ceiling. Man, it's messy. It's definitely in this same like area of like Diva Hero and Amaryllis. And the only reason I'm even ranking Diva Hero this highly is because of that Kemon's build. Like, if it wasn't for Kemon's build, like, I wouldn't be ranking Diva Hero this highly, but I've had a lot of personal success with that list, and I think it's really strong. So I could be overrating Diva Hero here, and I could be underrating Value Turbo here, but I do think it's worse than Dragon Turbo. Like, the fact that Dragon Turbo has like 3 major wins and a bunch of major tops, and it has like literally like a 10th or even a 20th of the Value Turbo representation, just says like this deck is clearly more powerful in my opinion. And I do think that Dragons, like, nobody fucking plays it for no reason. I still don't understand, but if the same amount of people were playing Dragons as were playing Value Turbo, it would have just as many wins, in my opinion. All right, moving on. Gladiator Beasts. This is Ma's top 8 Gladiator Beast list from Ultimate Time Wizard. This is one of 2 Gladiator Beast lists that has made it to top 8 fucking ever. Man, this deck is so bad against Blackwings, and it's so bad against Dragons, and it's so bad against Heroes, and it sucks versus Machina. I just really don't understand how anyone could place this deck higher than tier 2, if that. I think this deck is hot garbage. It consistently has some representation, but yeah, and it does well versus like, so it's definitely in the normal summon attack camp. It can also be in the lockout camp, which I think are the 2 best game plans to be in. But you're working with like inherently low power level and a bad Blackwing matchup. So where do you go from there, right? It's got to be better than playing like, I think the Jinzo deck is really the cutoff for me. Like this area, like this whole area of these decks. Here. What the fuck, man? Why can I not click on anything? I think these decks here is like the cutoff of like what is like kind of crazy to bring to a tournament. I think Glads is like the top of crazy to bring to a tournament. You're crazy if you bring Gladiator Beast to a tournament. I do not think you will do well if you bring Gladiator Beast to a tournament. I just don't think you will have good results, and I think that you should definitely play a deck above Gladiator Beast on this tier list if you want to do well consistently. But that being said, it did have its first 2 results this year. And I don't know. There's a list I want to try in the coming days that has Legacy of Yata-Grasu and Jar of Greed. And I'm going to see if those cards really bring what the deck is missing to the table. But if they don't, yeah, I would personally rate this deck much lower. I would personally rate it lower than Flamvel even. I would personally never take this deck to a tournament, seriously, because I think it's just like, it's just so dog shit versus Blackwings, and that's the most popular deck. Like, it's just such a bad Blackwing matchup, but yeah, I don't know. Moving on. Next deck. Blackwings. Speak of the devil. I think it'd be pretty disingenuous to not rate this as the number one deck in Edison format right now. It is the deck to beat. It has won the most tournaments by far. It has the most tops by far. It has the most people playing it by far. So, yeah, I think it is the deck to beat. I think if your deck has a bad Blackwing matchup, probably shouldn't bring it to a tournament, like straight up, unless you just really like that deck. Either that, or you better sideboard pretty heavily for it. I do not think this deck is a higher tier than anything in this tier. I think that it is the same tier. Like, I think Dragons, Blackwings, Diva Hero, Vayu Turbo, Amaryllis, Fairies, Machina Lightsworn, I think these are all tier 1 decks. I don't think that there is a tier 0 deck in Edison format, and I don't think there ever will be, which is cool. But I do think that right now the tier 1 deck that is the most dominant is Blackwings. And whether that means that people need to start like practicing their fairy gameplay and studying how to use the light monsters and the consistent consecrated light as a way to battle Blackwings, or people need to like come up with better sideboard plans to deal with it, or I don't know. But this list is the most recent first place list, Hector's HT19's first place list from RBET LA, and I've had the pleasure of practicing it, and let me tell you, it's fucking gasoline. It's by no means a perfect deck. It falls in that normal summon attack deck game 1, and then game 2 it becomes a lockout deck with all the floodgates. So I think it is the two strongest game plans in Edison format, and I think it might be the best or second or third best at executing those game plans. Probably the best, realistically, at executing the normal summon attack game plan, just because of how quickly it swarms. Yeah, the deck is cool. I just think it's a really fun deck to play. It's very skill intensive. Usually when you have two players in the mirror match, the better Blackwing player wins. And I think it's a really cool deck to have at the top, because almost any deck can like side for it and like do well. It's not unbeatable by any means. There's like a bunch of great sideboard cards for it, like Trap Hole, Consecrated Light, Smashing Ground, like whatever. There's like a bunch of good cards, DD Warrior Lady, that do well into this deck. But it's just very consistent. It has a strong spell card in Black Whirlwind, so it's good going first. It's great going second because you can normal summon and then attack and gain that advantage back by battle. Whereas decks that are playing Rykos, they struggle going second. They don't have the ability to get the advantage back while going second, take advantage of that battle phase that they get. Yeah, high tier deck. And I don't think this will ever not be a high tier deck. If that day ever comes, damn, that's crazy. Damn, that is actually crazy. But yeah, sorry, where were we? We were here. Yeah, I do think this deck is good. I think it is the deck to beat right now. Moving on. Oh, decks that have a good matchup against Blackwings, Fairies for sure. Rescue Cat, I think, has a good Blackwing matchup. I think some of the Machina decks have good Blackwing matchups. Machina does historically pretty well versus Blackwings. I think Vayu Turbo and Dragons also do pretty well in Blackwings. It's by no means a like heavy favorite versus everything. It's just a slight favorite versus everything, and that's what makes this deck so cool to have at the top. I think it's just like you can always beat it with whatever you're playing. You just have to kind of outplay your opponent and have the right sideboard cards, basically. All right, moving on. Let's see. Hybrid Blackwings. So this is basically Blackwings, but you play Dark Greffers as well. I think this list has fallen off a little bit. I think if you're going to play the Greffer stuff, the triple Greffer stuff, you might lean more towards the Ryko lists. But that being said, man, Black Whirlwind is so much better than fucking Ryko. I'm going to be real. This deck is good as fuck. It's probably, because it's bad against like the previous list of Blackwings I just showed you guys, it's a little bit difficult to rank it higher than that. Oh, but it is still a very good deck. I feel weird rating this deck in general because it's the same deck but with 3 Greffers instead of like Legacy of Yatagarasu, basically, and it gets to play Burial too. Higher ceiling, lower floor with a worse mirror match percentage. Whatever, we'll just put it here for now. This is the Swedish Black Wings. The Swedish players came up with the idea to play 3 Graph Earth. Maybe they did, I don't know. But they were some of the first people to have success with it. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily that different from regular Black Wings. So I'll put it at the top. All right, moving on. Hero Beat. God damn, this deck is mid. What did I have to represent this? Gemini Spark. Ah, god damn it. We don't have the art. Hold, everyone. Hold. Just gonna extract the art real quick. There we go. Alright, Hero Beat. I think this deck is worse than Quick Draw, but I think it is the... I think it's like the bottom of decks you should bring to a tournament. Hold on. Let me just select these and move on. I think this is the bottom of decks you should bring to a tournament, is Hero Beat. It's a fine deck. It has a good Blackwing matchup. It has a decent Dragon matchup. It's pretty poor into the Synchro combo and Lightsworn decks. It does pretty poorly versus Machina, and it does pretty poorly versus Frogs. So like every deck that is slightly less represented than Blackwings, and let's be real, Blackwings is going to be like 20% of the field, which is just not enough to justify only having a good Blackwing matchup. Playing this deck is like eating sandpaper. It's really boring, but it is good. It is good. I don't think it's better than Quick Draw or Zombies, though. I think Zombies are better. I think Lightsworn is better. This is just my personal opinion. I don't fucking know. Take this for what you will. Hero Beat has fallen off incredibly over the last year. Once people figured out how to play around Gemini Spark, just kind of fucking... I just realized that this deck only has 2 Miracle Fusions or 3 Miracle Fusions and no other real payoffs. I think it was one of those decks that had its time, and it'll cycle back in eventually, but not right now. All right, next deck. Gravekeepers. Gravekeepers GK. Gravekeepers. Grave Greepers. This is another one of those decks that I think is like about as good as Hero Beat, but nobody plays it, which is good because it's not fun to play against. But yeah, I think it's about as good as Hero Beat, maybe a little worse. It's probably better than Glads or worse than Glads. This one's hard to rate. I don't know if it's better than these decks. It has no results. Fuck it. You're going in tier 3 Gravekeepers. Fuck you. Fuck Gravekeepers. Sure, if you hate Gravekeepers, that's what this should be called. Yeah, I'm placing it lower than Flambeau because fuck Necro Valley. I don't want to play against that card. Is it better than Fish? Probably not. Probably not. Maybe. All right, we'll place it. We'll place it above Fish. We'll place it above Fish for now. Tentative above Fish. Gadgets. You guys like my gadget deck? I think any sort of gadget deck is pretty garbage. I've seen some other players rate this a little bit higher than I would, but I just think that with the amount of pulling the rug in the format and the amount of like deck dev in the format, like generally speaking, if you're including 6 of these guys in your deck, you're gonna brick on them. You're gonna have a bad fucking time. I actually think it is worse than every other deck I've rated this far, by a measurable amount. This is a meme list, but like even like Machina gadgets, like just play the better Machina deck. Like what are you doing? I think playing a strictly worse deck is like pretty silly. Gadget Solidarity is cute, but just like not cute enough. It's not cute enough to only play machines and get owned by Cyber Dragon the one time you see it. Moving on, next list. Counter Fairies. Underrated. I'll say it, underrated. I think this deck is better than Glads. Like straight up. I think this deck is fucking good. I think this deck is hot. This is Easy Dub's, I believe, top 16 list of, or it's a combination of his list and my list. I don't really remember. But this list almost topped in RBET. List is gasoline. Every time I play it, I have a great time. My opponents have a bad time. It gets a bad rap for being a hard lockout deck, but it is fun. It is very, very fun, and it looks pretty when you own it, and it plays really, really well. A lot of you guys may not be seeing the X-Saber synergy with the monsters, but trust me, there's a lot of good X-Saber synergy here. Not just the Saber holes, but the fact that Full Helm Knight can negate attacks, protect your Deslocuta for another turn, protect your Bountiful Artemis, and then it can also allow you to synchro to get over things with either Bryonic or rip the opponent's hand apart with X-Saber Gotems. You can make it fairly easily in this deck because Gotems takes just Earth monsters. You can make it with multiple tuners as well. And Airbellum plus Forced Back is one of my favorite combos in Edison format right now. So yeah, really, really sick deck. Underrepresented. I think 0 people have played it in the last few RBETs, but really strong deck. I'd place it higher than Glad's. Fuck Glad's. I think Glad's is ass. All right, next deck, Zeta Reticulant for the memes, for the culture. I think this deck's pretty good. I think it's like better than, I don't know, man. I think it's better than we give it credit. I'll say that much. I think this deck is slept on. It's just a bunch of good cards in a deck that add up to cumulative advantage. Huh. I think if people played this, like this exact list, we would see it top, or just something similar to this with like maybe more legacies or whatever, Greffer or some shit. I think we would see it top, like straight up, if people actually played the deck. But they don't, so here we are. Let's move this instant zombie, this whole situation up more. Move all these guys up. I think Zeta Reticulant is probably worse than Hero Beat. Probably worse than Counter Fairies and Glads. Probably worse than Jinzo. Probably worse than Cat Synchro. Probably worse than Chain Burn. Or, no, I'd say it's on the same level as Chain Burn. Yeah, that's how I'd rank it. And then as far as Tier 3 goes, I think I'm going to bump Norlaris down to Tier 3. Just so we have a cleaner looking screenshot of the format. Let's take a look at this real quick. So, it's a brief recap. I think Blackwings is the deck to beat right now. Hybrid Blackwings being like kind of like a subset of that, but yeah, kind of falling into that place. I think Dragons is horribly underplayed. Both Dragon Turbo and Aggro Dragons, I think that they are a clear second best pick for me in Edison format, if not best pick, depending on where you stand on whether or not Dragons beats Blackwings. I think Vayu Turbo, because of its hot streak at the end of 2023, it's hard to write that off. That is a pretty crazy hot streak. So I'm going to put it in the 4th spot here. It's also the second most played deck right now. It's definitely not getting the same results as it was at the end of 2023, but it is still topping because a lot of people are playing it. Diva Hero, I think the Keymon list in particular, this one comes with a big asterisk. If you're not playing specifically that list, I think it's worse. I think it's significantly worse if you're playing a different list. But I think if you're playing specifically that list, I think he has cooked beyond reason. He's kind of the Diva Hero GOAT, in my opinion, right now. Because that list is fucking crazy. Amaryllis, easily a top-tier deck. It has made its way, solidified in my heart as a top-tier deck. The top 4 performance at RBET LA just, like, drove it home. Hero Frogs getting second place at RBET LA and first place at a recent Ultimate Time Wizard has solidified its place, I think, in the top decks for me personally. I do think Quick Draw Machina and Machina Lightsworn have a special place in my heart, and they're really good into some of these top tier decks here. Actually, a lot of the top tier decks. Every single deck above it probably has a good matchup against the Quick Draw Machina deck. So, except maybe Amaryllis. It does pretty well against all these. Maybe Diva Hero too can struggle with that. Christia decks, Christia Sworn, Fairies. My opinion of them is that they are still tier 1 decks. It is very hard to pick up those decks and just play them though. Christia Sworn it's like weirdly difficult for a Mill Prage deck. I do think the regular Fairies is better into Blackwings, so it'll give you, like, if you expect a lot of Blackwings at a tournament, just bring Fairies and just free roll. But I think it maybe struggles a little bit against like Diva Hero, struggles a little bit against Hero Frogs, and it struggles specifically against certain cards, can give this deck trouble. And that, and just like the high player skill necessary to play it, makes me put it a little lower. The tier 2, starting off with Lightsworn, I think it makes a lot more sense. All the zombie decks being at the top of tier 2 makes more sense to me personally. Volcanic Quick Draw, as well as Quick Draw being the top of tier 2, makes a lot of sense to me too. These decks, don't sleep on them. They will cook you. Hero Beat, once again, great matchup against Blackwings. Pretty decent matchup against Dragons, but pretty bad matchup against everything else in the top tier. So it's just hard to bring that to a tournament and just like rely on those two good matchups to get you to top 8. Counter Fairies slept on, better than Glads. Glads is mid. Jinzo also slept on. Historically, it's had a few pretty solid tops since the last time I did a tier list, and I think that it has more potential. Obviously, Garnets, same issue as Rescue Cat, same issue as Zeta, a lot of Garnets. Chainburn and Valhalla, I would rank them higher if they had results, but they don't. Norlaris hasn't had results since last year, kind of falling off, loses to DD Crow, loses to players not being an idiot. Flamvel, yeah, it's close. It's close. I could see Flamvel moving up, like being above like Counter Fairies, or even above like Hero Beat. I could see Flamvel moving up there. But yeah, the rest of this stuff, it's just a matter of like Garnets and results, I think. There's a lot of other decks in Edison format. I've played a billion other ones on this channel. There's, I'm sure, something I'm forgetting in this video. But this is my ranking as of right now. And let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Peace.